Welcome to Samsung Next Meets. My guest today is Ertan Can, partner at Multiple Capital. Ertan abi, thanks for joining me today. Could you give us a quick introduction to your fund and your role there?
Sure. Thanks for the invitation, Iskender. My name is Ertan Can. I am the founder of Multiple Capital. I'm living in Germany. I'm born in Germany. I'm second generation immigrant. I'm founder of, as I said, Multiple Capital.
And what is a fund of funds?
Yeah, yeah. Everyone speaks about VCs and founders and entrepreneurs, and the whole media, especially in Germany, loves writing about VCs. But there is, of course, the fact that also VCs have to raise money. So a fund of fund is money behind the money. So a lot of VCs need to raise money from other investors, and a fund of fund invests in funds instead of in companies. So we are investing, so Multiple is investing in European VC funds. That's our focus.
Cool, and in what kind of funds do you invest? So what are you looking for in a fund?
Yeah, so we are focused in what we call micro VCs or seed VC funds. We try to build a portfolio of very early stage portfolio companies across Europe. So we try to identify regional as well as vertical seed funds across Europe. We're building, or we are investing in up to 20 funds. And with this 20 funds, we are trying to build a 500 plus company portfolio.
Cool. And what are the most interesting and innovative fund models you've seen in the market? Are there any?
Yeah. So unfortunately, most of the funds are still very, very old school, and I would call them, the PE model, like the 220 simple fund model, LP-GP relationship, etc. I think there are a few new initiatives. One to mention in Europe is Entrepreneur First. I think they have managed to build a different model of accessing early founders and helping them along in very, very early. Another one is, of course, Seedcamp with their very broad portfolios and ecosystem that they've built in UK. Others to mention are Antler, which is copying EF's model, and there are some new, very data-based fund managers, which I personally like. So this is the new things that I see. But in general, unfortunately, I think this is also led by the LPs. So limited partners are the investors and funds, and they are more old school than we think, and they are not a big fan of innovation. So they want to have those standard LP-GP relationships and LP-GP structures.
Ertan abi, on a completely different note, there is a reason why I say abi. You have an immigration background. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I'm a child of immigrants in Germany. So my parents immigrated early 70s into Germany and moved to Frankfurt from a northeastern village in Turkey. And started to live here. And as many immigrants, they were planning to go back after a few years when they saved enough money to build something in Turkey. But then kids grew and started school, and so they stayed. And now 45, 46 years later, I'm still here. I'm born here. So second generation of a Turkish immigration family in Germany, really. That's my background.
Right, and how much do you identify actually with being Turkish? Would you say it plays a big role in your daily life? If so, how?
So of course, it's one of my native language. So I speak Turkish. I speak Turkish with my family. I try to speak with my kids. It's more difficult because they switch very, very early into German. And so that's one part. Other things, of course, being Turkish is, because I speak the language, of course, I like Turkish music, for example. I read Turkish books from time to time. I like Turkish movies.
Tarkan?
Not really.
So more sophisticated stuff.
I would say more folk stuff, so more really traditional stuff that I'm grown up with this kind of music, and I can really identify myself. I like it, and that's why, like, I think most people in Germany couldn't, like, my German friends couldn't understand if they listen what I listen to. But that's part of my culture. Same like food. I still love Turkish food. I love it.
Iskender kebab.
For example.
For sure.
So this is the kind of thing that I still identify, and of course I'm looking at the country a lot, looking at the political developments, economical developments in Turkey. I'm just interested in Turkey still. I wouldn't identify myself as a Turkish citizen. I think, and I don't know if this is the right question here, but I think one of the things that I believe about immigrants, especially Turkish immigrants here, is not about choosing, are you Turkish or German, but like living with both sides. And it's very important to understand that I call it, we are like a subculture in Germany. So we are Germans, but with a different, not the typical German culture that people expect from Germans. So that's a big difference, I think.
Absolutely. And do you think coming from an immigration background helped or rather hindered your career progression? Did you face any challenges relating to it?
So it's a very good question, I think, and personally I think it's both. So the answer is really both. So like coming from an immigration background family, I think especially the time when I grew up and went to school and university, I think you always had to work really hard, like super hard. There's nothing like, I didn't get anything for free. There was no free lunch, no free anything. So working hard was like part of my early life, and also starting like in business is, I think, more difficult. So one of the ways how it played really positive for me was I left Germany for a year as an exchange student and went to London, and that was 25 years ago, 20 years ago, and this helped me coming back when I came back to Germany. Like it just made me different, right? So it made me, at that time, 20 years ago, not a lot of people went to other countries to study, so I was one of the few, and especially, of course, one of the few immigrants who did it. So I immediately was in a different place. So it was more easy for me to reach out to banks, to at that time investment banks were really hip, and so that was like the career changer in my career, really, to have been in London. It improved a little bit my English, but on my CV, being in London helped me to get into different ways. But that's the one part. I just want to answer the second part of the question when I said both. I think in general and statistically, immigrants have huge disadvantages still in Germany when going through school, going through university, and starting especially their first jobs. So when I compare it to 25 years ago, when I started university and jobs, that the really worst thing is that it didn't get better, So I think I have the feeling, if I speak with young people today, it's not easier today as an immigrant. It should have been like 20, 25 years later, and we're discussing still the same things. So 25 years earlier, I discussed the same topics with German friends, German people that I knew. And today we're still discussing the same thing. And honestly, nothing changed into positive. It's probably even more difficult today to really get the entry to a lot of places.
Absolutely, unfortunately. Ertan abi, I feel like we are unicorns, and I don't like it. There are not many VCs, especially in the German VC scene, with an immigration background. Why is that?
Yeah, it's like, I'm a big believer in diversity also with my fund. I am a person with a minority background. I am backing VCs. I have, I think we have counted, I have backed when it comes to GPs, so partner level VC, I have backed now more than 60 or 70,
that's amazing.
GPs.
Wow.
So we really try to have an influence. I mean, we are not an anchor LP. We're not a huge, like we're not EIF or KfW or whatever, but we try to select in our portfolio. We try to have an impact with our selection. So that's one thing. The other thing is, of course, if you look at the universe of people raising a fund, right? If you look at the VC ecosystem, especially in Germany, but you can see that in most countries in Europe. It's unfortunately very similar in the UK. It's very similar in France. So you don't have, first of all, you don't have a lot of diversity. I'm not only talking about immigration or minorities, but you don't have really a lot of females. If I look at my German VC funds, and that's the biggest allocation or proportion of funds that we have in the portfolio of 23 funds, we have only one female GP, and that's interestingly a life science fund. I would call it old school fund. It's not like it's not one of those new kids on the block. It's one of those old school funds where we have one female GP. I would love to back more female GPs, and I would love to see more female GPs who really believe in the VC ecosystem and not only do it just because today it's super hip, but really believe in it and want to stay in that business for the next 2 decades. Unfortunately, we don't see that a lot, but that's one thing. So, the female-male discussion that, is opened in Europe much more, as we have much more awareness about, females in the VC business, etc. But if you look, so my view on that topic is diversity is not only about the sex of people, it's about their backgrounds, educational backgrounds. If you look at Germany and UK, for example, most of the VCs have a very, very similar educational background. They're coming from most of them are coming from 2, 3, 4 schools. Most of them have a business graduate, are business graduates. Most of them have started in business, banking, or consultancy, and are now VCs. Some of them are deep tech VCs, some of them are whatever it is, but most of them are like not really technical background people, not really design background people, or what you really would expect from top VCs today. And other things are, we're talking about minority backgrounds. You don't see minority backgrounds in the German VC ecosystem. It's like very, very rare that you have a VC with a minority background in Germany. And I'm not like, there is a difference. I think people mix it up sometimes. Just because you're not German or a non-German working for a fund doesn't mean that you have a migration background, right? So when I'm talking about minorities or migration backgrounds, I'm talking about underprivileged minorities. I'm talking about migrants from working families, coming in the 60s, 70s to Germany. I'm not talking about the super privileged US, Indian guy who's coming to Germany to work for a fund or something. That's a completely different thing, right? And when you look really at those underprivileged minorities, you don't see them in the VC ecosystem. Like I have raised my own fund, and I'm a solo GP, and like with all the hurdles that you have everywhere in the world, I think it's even more difficult in Germany to do that with minority backgrounds, to raise your own funds and to start something like that.
Ertan abi, what advice would you give to young people from immigration backgrounds who are looking to found their own companies or just make a great career?
Yeah. So that's again very subjective, but my advice would be to try not to go with the mainstream, because it will be just more difficult. You will have to use more resources compared to your peers when you go with the mainstream. So my strategy over the last 25 years was always to go a different route, right? So try, like if I would be young today, I would probably no kids, no wife, whatever, and leave and try to start something in China or Vietnam or some of those countries. I think again, that's like, it's an analogy to my 1 year London exchange 20 years ago. So today, London would be not enough, right? So even San Francisco, I think, is not really enough because that's a mainstream. Everyone wants to go to San Francisco. So it's not like London is not enough today. So today, I would go to Vietnam. I would go to Malaysia and start something and work for an entrepreneur or work for a VC fund there. That's the way how what my advice would be.
That's great food for thought. Ertan, last question. Which VCs, let's talk about names, like which VCs and founders in Europe with first-gen immigration backgrounds are making waves in the industry?
VCs. Founders.
And or founders, both.
Yeah. So I think, so if I look at my London-based portfolio, and if I look at the founders in the London-based portfolio, and I'm one of the LPs and one of the EF funds, we see that there are much more second-gen migrants as founders. Okay, so that's a really positive sign. So in UK, at founder level, we have a lot of second-gen migrants in those companies. I think in Germany it's less. We still have some, one of the most famous names is Ertan, founder of Auto1. But but we don't have a lot of names in Germany, right? You don't have really, like, if I look at my German portfolio, and it's the second biggest portfolio, we have more than 150 companies in our portfolio. If you look through them and look at the founders, of course, we have some non-German, but I wouldn't call them, again, underprivileged migrants. They are, sometimes from the Nordics, they are UK-based, they are US-based, but that's not right. That's not migrants for me, right? We have, so the second layer, the VCs, if you look at the VCs, and again, if you look at VCs in Europe, so in Germany, I answered, I think, the question already. I think we don't have a lot of VCs in Germany with a migration background. One of the names that I know personally is Masoud Kamali. He's, I would say, a real self-made entrepreneur and invests his own money into tech companies. So he's one of the few really with a migration background who's doing that. I would name you, of course. Like, you are one of the person in the ecosystem who's really making waves, and there are not a lot. Like, we have a few more at junior levels. They're starting to work for VCs. Again, in Germany, not a lot. The diversification, the number of diversification in UK funds is higher at junior levels, I would say, right? But if you look at the GP level, so at the senior levels, partners, people who are founding the funds, unfortunately, most of the funds that I've backed, and again, we're looking to, like, if we can, we are looking to back those type of people. Most of them do not have a migration background. So even in UK, if you look at it, most of them are British or a few US American, living in Great Britain, raising their funds. But you don't have a lot of migrants raising funds. But it's like starting very small, and they have more difficulties to raise. So that's the current.
We have to work on it. Let's.
Listen, I have to name one.
Oh, please.
I just remember one name. It's oh my God. Okay.
A real star. The founder.
Well, I would say no. He's a VC. So I would say he is one of, like, he is not a brand, super brands, but I would say he is what I would call a star. Anyway, I forgot his name at the moment. I'm not good at names. He is working for a fund that I've backed in the UK. It's in Cambridge. The fund is IQ Capital, and one of the GPs in IQ Capital, he has a Russian background. I would call him a migrant in UK who raised a fund and is super successful with his fund, and very good for us as well to be part of that story.
Send me his name later on so we can check him when we publish this video.
Yeah.
Seems to be a cool guy. Cool. Ertan, thanks a lot. That was super insightful. We will try to work on these issues. We have to.
Yeah,
right?
like, super happy to be, part of that, and thank you very much for the invitation. Hope to see much more videos, many more videos with migrants and people speaking loudly, openly, about this topic. I think the thing is about moving part by part, so it's not like a big change immediately. We have to work on it, and I hope in 25 years it will be a much better situation for all of it.
As always, we have to start at some point, and
Yeah.
that point is now for us. Tavi, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dirk.